The podcast you're about to listen to, Focused on Forward, was created on Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First off, it's free. Free is always amazing. Secondly, there's a creation tool that's going to allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone, tablet, or computer. Anchor is going to take that podcast and going to distribute it for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and so many other platforms. And you get to make money from your podcast right away with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one convenient place. So how do you find it and use it? Well, go to your app store, download the free Anchor app, or go to anchor.fm to get started. You too can make a podcast. You can do it with Anchor. Welcome to Focused on Forward. The purpose of this podcast is to focus on recovery from life situations. Be it a disease, chronic or acute, perhaps the loss of someone so dear to you in death, or a change of life patterns that has affected you so profoundly that you have no choice but to find your new normal and become focused on moving forward. Each episode is designed to show the positivity that people bring to each and every one of their stories, the successes they've had, ways that they have become so definitively focused on moving forward. We look forward to sharing their stories, and we hope that they inspire you just as much as they have inspired us. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to Focused on Forward. I'm very excited to have our guest here today. A little bit of backstory about our guest. I was watching some videos on TikTok, as you do when you're bored and you're looking for something to do on a Saturday afternoon. And I came across this particular TikTok creator's page, and I thought, man, this guy's got such a cool story. And then his wife was involved in some of the storytelling as well. And I thought, man, she adds a lot of flavor to what's going on here. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Andrew and his wife, Alexis. Now, typically on Focused on Forward, when we talk about overcoming things, we talk about overcoming physical problems. We talk about overcoming addictions and alcoholism or things along those lines. We've also started recently to talk about things that affect our mental health, things that affect our personal well-being. And that's very much what Andrew's story is. So I'm excited to turn the floor over to Andrew and his wife, Alexis, and they're going to tell this story. Sit down, buckle up, kids. It's going to be a fun one. Go ahead, guys.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm Andrew. This is Alexis.
Hi.
And my story essentially starts, I guess, in my childhood. I don't remember much before 4 years old. I remember Colorado, and I remember a lot of snow. And we lived in this tiny little house that was attached to a couple of other tiny little houses. And it was next door to a daycare, so everything was kind of really easily taken care of. As a kid, I would get really sick, and I didn't remember why. Everything started clicking later on. But I would have severe earaches. I would have fevers and all sorts of really horrible stuff that the only way I was taken care of was to be put in an armchair and covered with a blanket and left. My mother was never really much in the picture at that point. She wasn't much in the picture at all. She provided very little of the maternal instincts that I assume a mother would have. But growing up was hard in that I grew up very quickly. I learned how to do my laundry. I learned how to cook. I learned how to clean. Not well, according to my wife. Not quite up to standard.
You do your best.
I do my best. I try. So as I was growing up, I never really noticed that anything was off. I always thought that my childhood was normal. I always felt like I had a normal mother who was just away from her ex-husband for varying reasons, anything from his addiction to Dungeons and Dragons to satanic cults. Satanic cults. So I get later on in my life, I would say around high school, when I start pushing back. I'm a teenager. I'm not giving my mother what she wanted out of me, and I came to a point where I finally met someone who gave me more of a feeling of being a part of a family, a part of being loved than I had ever felt before in my life, and that was Alexis. And to this day, she just provides so much to my life. But I digress. So after meeting Alexis, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Just real quick, how old were you when the two of you met?
I was 18. She was 17. It turns out I was 19 and she was 17.
We'll get to that part.
We'll get to that. Okay.
So during this whole process, I, of course, we fooled around. It was fun. We were teenagers. We got to enjoy life. I did everything I could to stay out of the sight of my mother to keep this relationship going. And
well, that's because she kept you isolated from
everybody. From a very early point in my childhood, I was kept alone. I started working when I was 11 to help pay bills, to help buy food. And again, I thought all this was normal. But, meeting Alexis, I started realizing what a family was about, what it was like, what it was meant to be, I guess, was more of the apropos statement. So a funny story, whenever I first went over to her house, I apparently, and things skip my mind regularly because I have learned to shut them out heavily. That's part of my mental restriction that was put upon me.
Partially, I'm sure, a bit of a coping mechanism as well.
Oh yes. No, it has been an atrocity on my life to not be able to remember a lot of the things that I wish I could. But I walked into her house and I look around and I'm like, wow, you're rich. Like really rich. Like, what's going on here? Have I like stumbled into a trust fund or something? What's going on?
Now, to put it into perspective for you, my parents lived in a 1,500 square foot ranch home on a dirt road. We were not rich. We were, lower middle class family. We were having spaghetti that night for dinner. But he just thought
clearly the Rockefellers.
Oh yes.
Yeah, he truly did. And I was like, what do you mean you're rich? What are you talking about?
So as a comparative, from the time I could remember, we moved several times. I'm talking when we hit the state we were in, we moved 2 to 3 times a year. I lived in every apartment complex in the area that had they were all very, very low income, very I've seen some horrible things because of it. I have
I can only imagine.
It was pretty bad. So, 2 to 3 times a year. But what's funny is she always kept me in the same school district, and that plays in later on. So back to Alexis. Upon meeting her, she became concerned about me more than I had realized. She started looking into, I don't look anything like my mother. So that was really a big first off.
Well, none of it really made any sense. When we first met, he said, I don't have any family. And I was like, how can you not have any family? What? He's like, well, I just don't have any family. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was,
yeah.
I guess that was the first hindrance in my background. And as time went on, she started asking more and more questions of my mother because, frankly, I had been trained, groomed per se, to not ask questions, at least not ask questions of her. I loved school. I loved knowledge. I've loved learning. I just never loved learning about myself. And it was kind of a dark, scary place for me. So Alexis shone a light in that dark, scary place. And things went downhill real quick, real quick. So about half a year into our relationship, I in 11th grade, I decided I was going to college. A couple of friends and I, we all kind of came to a conclusion that we were all going to go to the same college. So we had planned for it. We had done this, that, and the other. Unfortunately, I needed my mother for student loans. So she had to be a signature for it.
Yeah,
and
a guarantor, I
yeah,
think they call it.
guarantor. Yeah. So when I was getting ready to go to college during my senior year, I was told that I had to break up with Alexis. There really was no rhyme or reason behind it, just that my mother did not want her involved in my life anymore. And of course, there were uglier terms used, but that's the general statement that she made.
Yeah, so that was the line that your mother drew in the sand. This has to happen.
Yes. She wouldn't sign for college, nothing.
Yeah, wouldn't give me housing, wouldn't help me at all. And, she had used this before over and over again. She told me I could never join the military or I was kicked out of the house. And this was when I was like 13. So that scared me. I've always been scared of being left alone. I have really bad abandonment issues because of it. And she used that. She used that excessively. One of her favorites, actually. So I break up with Alexis, and it killed me. It truly deadened a part of me that I had hoped for my entire life. So I went to college. I went through my first year. My first semester was okay. I started dating another girl. That turned out terribly. And in the process of that, I would come back home and meet Alexis, and we would talk and just spend time together. And then I would go back to school and act like it had never happened. And of course, that made me look like I was garbage at that point in time in my life. So when my second semester came around, I had broken up with this girl and was talking to Alexis. My anger at that point had gone through the roof, and it was bad. I saw red. I wasn't able to control myself. My driving habits were affected by it. People didn't want to be around me because I was physically violent. It was pretty bad. So Alexis decided that she did not want to be a part of my life until I was able to overcome those anger issues. And
I told him to seek help.
And of course, seeking help meant that I would have to go against what my mother had always taught me, and that was help from a psychiatric, from a mental health aspect was always going to be detrimental to me. She loved going to therapists and psychologists, and she was, oh my God, my mother was absolutely intelligent, more so than I can ever hope to portray. She would manipulate not only what I said, but she would manipulate how the psychiatrist or therapist would react. And it always ended with, your mother's right, you need to change. And being that kind of wrong for so long really had an effect.
Why did they tell a child that?
Well, if you think about it, that's a scary kind of brilliant, being able to manipulate a trained professional, a mental health professional into, angling the conversation how she wants it.
Yep.
Yeah, no, she was brilliant. She truly was. We didn't realize how smart she was until much later on.
we need to question why she used it for evil and not for good. So being told that I needed help or I needed to seek help really just poked the bear, stoked the fire. But it again destroyed me. So that was time number two in within a year period that I was broken down so bad that I couldn't stand back up. So my grades dropped. I had to leave the college or the university I was in because I no longer could hold the scholarships. So I ended up moving back home and spent about 6 months with my mother again. And in that time, she controlled every aspect of my life. Now, I worked a lot. I was going to the local community college, and I worked 3 separate jobs. So I would be at work at 7 a.m. the bookstore, leave there at 10, to go to school or 10 to 12, I can't remember. Then I would go to school until about 4. From there, I would work at Pizza Hut until about 11. From 11 to 5 or 6 the next morning, I would work at the UPS air hub filling airplanes. And then I would sleep in the parking lot of the school so that I could go to work again the next day.
Wow.
Or in an hour.
Yeah. So I did that for about a year and a half or so. But in the process of doing all this, I decided, it was in my best interest to get out. So I found an apartment, and the only way that I could find an apartment was to have help. I couldn't be alone. So I called Alexis.
And at this time, I was dating a completely different person, living a completely separate life. And I was actually at my then boyfriend's house, and he called me and asked if I would help him and move in. And I knew the strength that took for him to call and ask for help. So I told him, I took a few days and I told him yes, which my then boyfriend was not very happy with. And I was about to move in with my ex-boyfriend.
I was going to say, I'm sure that made his day.
Yeah, pretty much. So needless to say, we broke up, and I moved in I decided to move in with Andrew.
The way it all occurred was pretty underhanded. So we had paid the first month's rent and whatever fees we needed to. So we had to actually wait for them to paint an accent wall. So it was a 400 square foot apartment with a kitchen where you could basically put your back up against the sink and your toes touching the fridge.
Nice.
So
Tiny.
the accent wall was bright green. And it was like one of 4 walls in the entire apartment. So we had to wait for that. It was mid-December when we learned about that. And we were going to move in January 1st. So at that point in time, my mother decided that it was in her ability to stop me from moving in with Alexis. And she gave me my last ultimatum of my teenagehood and said, you move in with her and we're done. You're out. I said, I'm moving in with her. So I was kicked out December 23rd,
Yes.
2006. And I was on the street with my stuff. And I, yet again, sucked it up and called Alexis. And I said, I have nowhere to go. I know we're going to move in together, but it's going to take me some time to get my stuff to where we need to be. And she did the biggest thing that had ever happened to me in my life, and that was she took me in, her and her family.
Yeah, I was living with my family or my parents at the time, and I called my mom and told her what was happening, and she basically was like, absolutely not. Andrew will not be on the streets. He can come live with us. So he came, and we had a kitten. We had picked up this kitten a few months prior that was living with me at my mom's house until we moved in together. This crazy kitten. But he came and lived with us until we moved in together. And he spent Christmas with us, and that was his first real Christmas.
I had never been involved with a family Christmas before, and it was something out of a picture book. It was magic. I slept on the couch. I got to be next to a Christmas tree. I got to have a Christmas dinner. I had a Christmas breakfast, and it was magical.
Christmas presents under the Christmas tree, and
so coming from the background you were coming from, did you kind of feel like you were on the outside looking into this, or
I
mean, it sounds like
time,
Alexis's family was very welcoming to you and
yes,
and inclusive of you, but did you still feel a little separated from what was going on based on your upbringing?
due to my mother's manipulation, I always went with family will let you down. Do not trust family.
Okay.
And even to this day, I still feel like I'm on the outside. I have a hard time hugging her parents. I have a hard time. I hope they don't listen to this.
And it's
They will.
but it's clearly not because of who they are. Or,
no,
No,
absolutely
absolutely
not.
not.
Absolutely
yeah,
not.
it,
No,
it has more to do
definitely
with your upbringing than who they are. So
And they
there's
understand that.
right, there's a clear line of distinction there of your challenges versus your feelings for them.
yeah. Now, my mother did well in training me to not trust in general. One story I used as a catalyst for that notion is I went to Disney World with her when I was, I believe, 7 or 8 years old. So this was after, I think, a year or two after we moved to the state we're in now. And Disney World, this was big for a kid, huge. This was
Yeah, absolutely.
1993, maybe.
Mhm.
And so I was so excited, but I was sick. I was sick again. So I was just getting over something, and I was given medicine. And instead of allowing me to have something that I could just, drink, my mother forced me to start taking pills. And we were driving there. The majority of the time, she would hand me a drink and force me to do it in the car while we're driving. So I don't know. Most people don't have like motion sicknesses and whatnot, but to be able to do that is difficult for someone learning how to do that. So it would usually, like, she'll hit a pothole or something and the pill would come out and go into the bottle and dissolve. And she would yell at me for wasting medicine. She would yell at me for 10 other things. And then she would turn around for about 10, 20 minutes and drive home. And then she turned back around. And she did that 4 or 5 times on the way there. When we got there, I got to attend the Ninja Turtle concert, which is the whole reason I wanted to go. Like that was it.
Nice.
So we did that once and had breakfast at the whatever castle once. And then for the rest of the week, she found every reason to yell at me and keep me in the hotel room, I think it was. Oh, it was hotel. Pretty sure it was a hotel. But they had in-service nannies. So I would always get the same nanny. She would always come in. She was younger, probably 17, 18 years old, would always complain about her classmates calling her the Jolly Green Giant. So I listened to this girl's story every day for like 5 days straight. It was terrible. I hope if she hears this that I apologize for what she went through. I was just too young to help her. But
young to help, too young to appreciate what she was dealing with. So
yes. So my mother would go to the one I remember specifically was Epcot. I really wanted to go to Epcot. I really wanted to go in and enjoy the technological aspect of it. I just never got to. So at the end of the trip, I made that statement. I stood up for myself and I said that I wish I was able to have enjoyed going there a little bit more. And she sat me down in front of the park. So there's the entrance, and then there's this big gathering area where the parking lot is. You're talking hundreds of people.
Yeah, I know where it's at.
So the stone, they were circular at the time.
Yeah.
So she sat me down on one of those, kneeled down, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "I'm leaving you here," and walked away into the crowd. And lucky me, I was able to bolt faster than she could walk in the crowd, and managed to make my way to the car, open the door, get in. I assume before she realized, and of course, there's too many people there for her to kick me out. So she had to take me with her. Sometimes I wish that I had just stayed.
Lived with the cat.
With the cats.
Do you think that she was actually going to leave you there, or do you think that she was just doing that again to manipulate?
It's difficult to say.
Knowing
At
his
this
mother, I
point,
think she would have left you.
being involved in the information that we have about her now, I would say that she was probably 100% serious.
Okay.
But even even being that young, I still knew it was a tactic. I still knew it was a ploy of some sort. I didn't know if she would 100% go through with it, but I wasn't going to take that chance. I learned survival instincts really early on. But that that led into my birthdays being one specifically. I remember she would come up, she gave me a cupcake, she bit it in half, and then told me happy birthday and walked off. And that was it. That was the big birthday. That every story that I have that was a good memory with her is always followed by something much, much worse. We have a running joke in my current family, this beautiful family that I have right now, that every person that gets involved with her has PTSD in one way or another. You just don't walk away from her.
Okay.
So so we finally moved in with Alexis, or Alexis and I finally moved into the apartment, and my mother decided that's when she really wanted to get involved in my life again. After kicking me out, after saying she wouldn't help us at all, she would come and knock on our door when no one was home. Like, beat on the door. The neighbors said something about it. I think they even called the management of the apartment complex a couple of times. And I would be in school or at work, Alexis would be at work, and we would get like dozens of nasty phone calls and text messages saying we weren't there for her, and blah blah blah.
Where were you? I have no clue where you are. I'm at work. I live on my own. I'm almost 20 years old.
Yeah, it was interesting times. So she continued that number for a while. We stayed at that apartment for maybe a year. There was some really bad stuff that went down there. So it was decided that we were going to move. We moved across the street to these beautiful little townhomes. Loved them, absolutely loved them. We were rented out by some, I cannot remember her name, but she was this older woman who, took cash and never really asked questions. So
nice.
We loved her a lot. She lived just down the street, and that was, my mother started really trying to be, how to put this, she really tried to intercede in our life at such a massive level at that point. Tried to manipulate both of us. There was no stopping her, if you will.
At this point is whenever we actually got the internet for the first time.
Yeah.
And I started trying to find Andrew's family. And every single time I'd get to a certain point, and it wouldn't go any farther than that. It always stopped at 1993, which was concerning to me. And I would tell him, and he's like, yeah, whatever. I don't have family. It's fine. So just to intercede there.
Yeah,
I have to assume that 1993 has some significance later on.
It does.
It does, yeah.
I'm not Sherlock Holmes, but I can read the writing on that wall.
Yeah, 1993.
The wall's the side of a barn, basically. I should have seen it. I really should have. You
were trained not to.
I really was.
Trained not to ask questions or think for yourself.
Just about myself.
Yes.
So, one day I was driving home, and this was the main original kicker for how all this kind of started. I was driving home from work. It was a long day. I was not wanting to speak to her at all, but my mother called me, And I picked up reluctantly, and it was nothing but complaining, moaning, talking about her job, how everyone's against her, normal stuff, basically everything that we heard every time we spoke to her. And her phone cut off. Call dropped. Nothing more than a call drop. I tried to call her back instantaneously, no pickup. She spent the next, well, let's say after probably a few days worth of really horrific messages and texts. I'm talking really bad stuff. She spent the next 3 years?
Yeah.
The next 3 years not talking to us.
She disowned Andrew, said that she was never going to talk to us again, and that he was just a horrible human being. We'll leave it at that instead of getting into the nitty-gritty of what she said.
Yeah.
Over a dropped call?
Over a dropped
call.
Single dropped call. That wasn't even my dropped call. It was her phone. So,
okay. Understood.
It was really random. I was like, oh, okay.
That was the best 3 years of our life at that point in time.
It really was.
That's kind of sad, actually.
It is. It is, but it's funny. Along the line, it's funny looking back. So we spent a few years at this townhome duplex. We loved living there. We got our first dog. It was a little beagle, Jack Russell mix named Zoe. We had a neighbor who was a really good friend. I mean, he stopped the cops from taking my car when a person who signed up for the military took the money and ran, and then gave them my information, home address, car.
It was bad luck.
So about 3 in the morning.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, they were attempting to tow my car. He runs out there. He's this huge 6'4", burly, red-haired Viking of a man.
It starts yelling at him.
Just starts tearing him to pieces, yelling, telling, that's this guy. The other guy you're looking for is down the road. The guy lived like 4 or 5 houses down. So they went and took care of that.
Those 3 years is whenever Andrew really started opening up and accepting people into his life, having friends, having a life.
Yeah.
It was his first taste of freedom away from his mother, which is why it was the best years of our life.
And that was
you're able to start seeing the world as a different place.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't have somebody breathing down my neck telling me that I couldn't. So we stayed there for
that's a big deal.
It is.
2 years?
Yeah, we lived there for 2 years.
We lived there for about 2 years, and we had to move because there was a shooting kidnapping across the street. So we're like, nope, we're gone.
Well, and my mother was going to school a few blocks down, and her catalytic converter got stolen off of her truck. And she was like, y'all live in the ghetto, y'all need to move. So after the kidnapping and
that's impressive.
Yes. Like they heard the sawzall going off, and they ran out, and nothing was missing. So she turned her car on, and I heard this truck without the catalytic converter. I jumped.
Oh man!
I jumped and had to change my pants.
So she finally was like, "Yep, y'all live in a horrible neighborhood. You need to move." So they found this little house. It was like 3 doors down from them, and they helped us move into it, and that was our little house.
That was really truly the beginning of our family. But up to that point, Alexis and I had not really conceded to being in a relationship together.
We just lived together.
It really came from the time where we broke up the first time, we broke up the second time. All of that was culminated into this really messy idea of what our relationship was. So we just kind of lived mutually, and it was great. It was great. We had friends, but when we moved into the house, that really cemented us being in this very significant point in a relationship. And we loved each other. We still love each other. But that was big. Neither one of us had ever been at that point before. Neither one of us had ever felt that way about another person. So we furnish this little house. We have a little dog. We get another little. No, wait, no, was that?
Yeah, we got another little or a big dog.
Yeah, that the second one was a big one. So we get another dog.
So 2 cats, 2 dogs.
And we are seriously considering the rest of our lives together. We're talking about marriage, we're talking about having a kid, and we're talking about buying a new fridge. I mean, the big stuff, the stuff that really really makes a relationship.
Yeah, right. The everyday stuff of life. Yeah.
So my mother comes back.
No.
Oh,
I got sick.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so it was my birthday. I was 24.
You had just finished college. Yes.
So that had to be, yeah, that was 2012. In 2012, that birthday that I had, we had burgers, bacon, delicious cheeseburgers at her parents' house. We go home. Oh, it was so good.
Well, that's what they do every year for your birthday. You get to choose your meal and your cake. Andrew doesn't like cake, so he gets to choose his pie. My mother makes it.
And she's a wonderful cook.
Sounds delicious.
Baker. Yes. So we get home and we go to bed, and I think I was having a panic attack or something that day. So something mentally just unstable, because my birthdays were always, that day will always sit sideways with me. I will never have good feelings about that day. And it was hard.
His mother always made his birthday about her, never about him, and it was never there were never good memories associated with his birthday. No matter how much me and my family tried, we just couldn't break that barrier.
Some things are harder than others. That makes sense.
So I got sick. Andrew took some medication to help him sleep.
And not just sick, like, she has never shown pain but 3 times in our lives together. 3 times. This was the first. So I wake up to her telling me we need to go to the hospital. I'm groggy. I'm like,
and I was like, I can't drive. I need you to drive me. I'm sorry. I know you took medicine. I need to go.
So we make our way to the hospital, and I'm flipping out. Like, I'm still in this very selfish period of my life, very scared of being abandoned. I can't handle it. So they come in and they say she needs to go into surgery right away. I guess I'll just let you tell this part.
So I go into the emergency room, and they're like, immediately, you need surgery. It's 2:00 in the morning. And I'm like, I need surgery. And they're like, yeah, your gallbladder is about to rupture. It needs to come out. You're going to go septic. Oh, okay. So,
okay.
Andrew, of course, is like, I'll sign the papers. Well, they gave me Dilaudid, and I was really out of it, so I couldn't sign for myself. Andrew's like, well, I'll sign the papers. And they're like, are you married? No. So he had to call my mother at 2:00 in the morning, and she came and signed the papers, and everything was taken care of. But that's really when I figured out that Andrew didn't have anybody to sign papers for him. If he were to go into the hospital, if something happened, he would be a ward of the state, and I wasn't okay with that, and I wanted to fix it. And Andrew had actually proposed to me a few times before that, and I'd always told him no.
Let me reiterate that, a few times before.
I told him no, but that was an eye-opening moment. It was I don't want him to be alone. I just can't have that. So I called him one day while I was at work, and I told him that we needed to get married.
Within a few weeks, mind you.
Yeah, I was like, I had requested December
21st, 2012.
Yes, off, just in case it was the end of the world.
For those that remember, was the end of the Mayan calendar.
Yes.
So I requested it off. Yes. So 4 years prior, I requested that day off. And I was like, let's get married on this day. I already have the day off. It'll be fun. Let's do it. And he's like, okay. So as we're planning the wedding is when his mom came back.
Oh, yes. So she was unchanged.
She still hated me.
She still hated the fact I was with her. She still wanted to control everything, but acted as if she wanted to be a part. And that came about with her requesting to do the rehearsal dinner. Being the person Alexis is, she's kind, loving, caring, and said, yes, you can do that.
I just wanted to include her. That's Andrew's mom.
It's hard to say anymore.
I know.
In any other circumstance, that would seem like a reasonable request.
Yes.
Exactly. And I was like, maybe she's different now. So sure, you can do it. That's fine.
Was it the day before?
It was the day of.
The day of the dress rehearsal. My mother never
She wouldn't
showed
call
up.
us, nothing.
So we had to plan. Alexis and her mom planned a just little rehearsal at the house. It's where we had the wedding, and we had a great time. But my mother had flaked,
And then it acted like nothing. Like, oh well, that was nothing. It's fine.
Yeah. But day of the wedding was wonderful. I had a skull bow tie. I wore black Converse.
I bought him a suit.
A tiny little
Nice.
suit.
It was his first suit ever.
First suit. It was beautiful. I teared up when I got to tell Alexis how much I loved her. And
it was very small, maybe 10, 15 people. We didn't want a huge wedding. It was just.
But guess who showed up? Yeah. For about 15 minutes.
So the 16th person. Yes. Okay.
Yes. The 16th person showed up.
So she came in, took maybe 2 pictures. Maybe.
Yeah. She stayed for the nuptials, and then I think we have 2 pictures of her there, and then she literally just left.
They're the most awkward pictures I've ever seen in my life, and we have a 6-year-old. So
that's saying something.
She's standing on one side of the room, me and Andrew are on the other side of the room, and then that's our picture together.
So we get married, we sign all the documents, everything's good. My mother was still kind of there and still pushy in a lot of things, but at that point in time, we had been together for so long that it didn't really affect us that much. I mean, we were concerned if she came over, we were concerned if she wanted something, but we never really, if we didn't want to deal with her, we didn't have to. So that was until we decided that we were going to have a baby. And we went on our honeymoon, and a month later, Alexis found out she was pregnant. Now this was big because she was told she would never get pregnant. So the
multiple doctors at my entire life, they always told me I'd never have children. And so for me to come find out I was pregnant was like, we were trying for a kid, but we were still shocked by the news. It was like, what? I'm not supposed to be able to get pregnant.
Talk about triumph after triumph after triumph.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
I mean, that to overcome that, it was big. So we were very happy. I remember the phone call. I was working as basically a land surveyor's assistant sort of deal. And I got the phone call. She said, "Hey, you have a second?" I said, "Sure, yeah. What's up?" "I've got some news. I'm not sure how you're going to take it." I was like, "Okay, let me sit down. I just ate my lunch. Let me drink some water real quick. What am I going to deal with here?"
Let me pull up a chair. Let's do this.
Yeah. She says, "I'm pregnant." And something in me changed. I think a lot of the loss I felt throughout my childhood, a lot of the abandonment, a lot of the just really horrific things that I dealt with in my childhood just kind of floated away. And it was amazing. I loved it. I loved knowing that Alexis was pregnant. I loved that I got to take care of her during that time. It was my favorite.
There was one part that he really struggled with, and that's when he really started pressuring his mother into knowing who he was.
A lot of that came from the fact that I didn't want to end up like my mother. I didn't want to be that kind of parent. So that fear led me to ask more about who I was and where I came from.
Reasonable.
And also there's familial aspects, there's genetic aspects. You want to know what your child's going to have to deal with.
Absolutely.
So we were fervent. We pushed and we pushed and we pushed, and all we got was crying.
And so whenever we got married, I didn't take Andrew's last name because I had a feeling it was made up. He grew up thinking that he was Spanish. That's what his mother had always told him. So their last name did not fit that bill. And I was like, there's no way that that's your real last name. So I refused to take his last name because I was not about to change my very powerful, prominent last name to a made up last name.
Right. One without any attachment. Sure.
Yeah. So I kept asking her when I was pregnant, did you change his name? And she finally admitted and said that she changed his last name. Nothing about the first name, just I changed his last name because I got divorced. Oh, okay. But his last name still wasn't her maiden name, so it still didn't make any sense. I was like, I don't understand.
Okay, so that didn't make any sense. Yeah, because I'm thinking, okay, so she changed the last name because of divorce. That makes absolute sense until you just said that.
Yeah. So it made no sense. It was like, so where did this name come from? Oh, and she wouldn't tell us.
Now, my entire life, I asked who my father was, and the only thing I managed to get out of her was the first name. And of course, horror stories about what he and I'm using air quotes here, what he did to me. Threw me up against walls as an infant, beat me, yelled at me. Anyway, it was bad what she said. So I had always taken that as truth.
Well, there was one thing that I have to mention briefly. One of the stories was that Andrew he was apparently left-handed as a child, but his father beat it out of him. That is a story that she told me multiple times, and
interesting.
There's a reason I am saying that, and we will get to that in
a second.
Okay. So a little bit down the line, when Alexis is about ready to pop, my mother decides to make the trip down to our house, sit in front of us, and had the gall to tell us that we were not fit parents or fit to be parents, that we should not be having this baby, and since we are still having the baby, we should give it to her.
Oh my.
We were too young and inexperienced. We had no clue what we were doing.
Oh wow.
So, and this wasn't the first. This was the first time, but after that, the rest of the pregnancy, she pushed for his. We had a son. His name is Aries, and she pushed for him and wanted us to give him to her.
But we didn't even want her in the house until she was willing to give us some sort of information on my anything regarding my family. I was tired of hearing they're just dead. So the day came. Alexis was in labor for 72 hours, active labor 24.
Now, mind you, real quick, before I went into labor, his mother would constantly ask to watch our son every night the night he's born.
Yes.
She wanted him to, and she was being serious. I want him to spend the night with me.
The night he is born.
The night he is born.
How about
just thinking back on it? Just
when I was like, I want to be there when the baby's born. I was like, absolutely not.
So Alexis had a home birth. We had a doula. We had a midwife, and we had Alexis's mother and me. So at the 24-hour mark, it was October 30th at 6 p.m. I remember to the T. Aries was born. And like I said, Alexis had been in labor for 72 hours. At the end of it, she had been passing out, mainly from pain.
Blood loss.
But she had not once cried. This woman is amazing, like absolutely amazing. I just can't even get over it. But that's the second time in her life that she was in pain.
Or showed pain, not in pain, just showed pain.
So she basically passed out for the rest of the night after holding Aries for a little bit, and then I took care of Aries for the rest of the night. He slept that entire night. Also, something that comes in later because most kids are up screaming,
crying, wanting to be fed every 4 hours. Aries didn't do that. He slept.
Yeah, he slept. So when and mind you, during the pregnancy, during labor, we had some older women come to the house to preach, and we had to, as nicely as we could, tell them to leave because my wife is on the couch screaming.
And they were fascinated because they never had heard of a home birth before. And
can we see?
I'm like, can you get out of my house, please? I'm trying to be nice.
This is not buy a ticket time. This is not.
It's like, go.
So, at the end of the night, we called Alexis's dad to let him know what was going on. Alexis's mom was obviously there, so she knew what was going on. The midwife left, the doula had already left, and we got a call the next day. No.
You called her.
We called my mother the next day and got reamed for not telling her that he was born. Not calling her that night, not
including her in the proceedings.
The whole process.
Oh, okay.
Like she wanted to be here. She
basically wanted to cut the cord.
Yeah. Wanted to blow out the birthday candles, everything.
Now, mind you, after I had Aries, I had some complications and I had some postpartum bleeding. And at the time, we found out that I was actually pregnant with twins and had lost one of the twins during my pregnancy, and that caused some other issues. So it was a very emotional night. Which is really the only reason we didn't call her. I was exhausted. Luckily, we
were already dealing with enough at that point.
Exactly. It was like, no, we're not doing that tonight. So we called her the following morning, and she just went crazy.
Blew up, like worse than usual. She kept that up for a while. Aries started getting a little bit older. We started letting her come over and spend time with him, wholly supervised. Because one of the few things that Alexis told me about the situation, my mother, our son, was that she was afraid that she's a flight risk.
Which was very hard to tell Andrew because that's his mother, and I didn't want to offend him, but I just had this mommy instinct telling me that she's trying to take our son. I was scared that she was going to get DSS involved, that she was going to do anything in her power to get our son. I was terrified.
Other than just a remote feeling, was there some action or activity that she had done up to that point that made you say or feel that this was what she was intending to do? I mean, other than the fact that she told you that A, you weren't fit, and B, that she needed to be there the night of, or was there more to that?
There was definitely more to it. She wanted to watch him right after he was born. Just the way that she acted towards me.
She wanted to be alone with him all the time.
Well, even before he was born, she would call me and ask how he was doing, would not talk to me, but would talk to my unborn child. It just gave me really heebie-jeebie vibes. And then after he was born is whenever she would say things. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go, please.
She would just do things to try to garner control of him.
So you were just a baby facilitator at that point to her.
Yeah, pretty much. I was just a clone machine is what I call myself. Just a little clone because I cloned Andrew because they look identical.
So about, I would say 3 months into Aries' life, my mother came over and...
Oh, he was 6 months old at that point because he'd already had his lip tie.
Okay.
Yeah,
we spent 4 months with Aries. No, was it 4 months?
It was 4 months.
With Aries screaming, crying, and unconsolable. And we found out that he had an issue latching. So we had to deal with the tongue tie, lip tie. And that's about when we had to start bottle feeding too.
It was. And so other medical things started coming up with him. And this is whenever I really started pushing Andrew's mother to give me more information, medical history on his family. Which it would always end up with her trying to manipulate us and crying and saying, I can't tell you, I need to talk to a lawyer. She told us that she needed to talk. That was her always go-to. After Aries was born, I need to talk to a lawyer.
No, I can't tell you anything unless I talk to a lawyer.
We're like, what? So at this point, it's a
Curious.
rolling joke.
Yeah.
It's like a rolling joke in my family because he looks nothing like his mother. It was like, oh, well, your mama just took you from somebody. We don't know.
We always joke that it was like Enrique Iglesias' child, or
It's like you were stolen. So I mean, we would talk about it at family gatherings. Like, yeah,
huge joke. So around 6 months in, we first of all started noticing that he had a little bit of weakness in his right side,
on his right arm.
in his right arm. So we got a brachioplexic injury diagnosis. Thank you. And what that is just as he was coming out, his shoulder would have gotten caught on Alexis's hip, and him being pulled out would have been just would have pulled it farther than usual and caused an injury,
making him unable to really have a whole lot of function in that arm. And I talked to the midwife, and because of course I was out of it when he was born, so it's like, I don't know what side came out first.
Yeah.
And she told us that it was like, well, his left side came out first, not his right side. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I'm like, no, that doesn't. So he had to start doing a bunch of therapies, and we were trying to get insurance for him because at this time he didn't have insurance, and
therapy is expensive.
Therapy is very expensive. So his mother.
She came over one day, sat down on the couch, and just the absolute gall of this woman just blows my mind. I wish I had a tenth of her ability to do this, but she looked at us and she said, "I'm going to get an insurance policy on Aries under my name." Now, when I heard that, I had been working with attorneys for about 8 years, 10 years almost, and that didn't sound right. So I started looking into it. Well, when you get an insurance policy on a minor, you have certain rights to them, certain access to medical records, certain
yes, you do,
signing rights, that sort of thing. So I knew something was wrong there, and we denied her 100%. Said no, absolutely not.
Well, then she would start talking and saying that there could be nothing wrong with her grandchild, and that we needed to get a second opinion, and basically completely dismissing our concerns and worries about our child. And that we, once again, were just inexperienced and we had no business having a child.
Growing up, you talked about feeling separated from your family. You talked about. Thank you for listening to part 1 of the story of Andrew and Alexis. Part 2 of that story will take place 1 week from today, right here on Focused on Forward. Well, that concludes another episode of Focused on Forward. To be a guest of Focused on Forward, you can reach us through Twitter at podcastfof, through our Facebook page named Focused on Forward, or through email focusedonforward@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing each and every one of your stories that has yet to be told. So until then, be safe, be kind, and be loving to one another as you stay focused on forward.